everybody, my name is Olivia and I'm 18 years old. Tell me, have you ever dreamed about one day meeting your twin brother you had not known about? Or a twin sister? Do you think things like that don't happen in real life? Don't jump to conclusions so quickly. My story, although it seems incredible, proves that miracles do happen. Subscribe to the channel because I know what will really surprise you. I live with my adopted parents. They took me in 10 years ago. Before that, I'd lived my whole life in an orphanage, and so I don't remember my real mom and dad at all. They must have abandoned me when I was very young. It happens, and I hold no grudge against them. My new parents became my real family. This story began the day I suddenly got a stomachache. The pain was so bad that my mother called an ambulance. They took me to the hospital, examined me, and told me that I needed a surgery immediately. It wasn't anything too bad, just an appendicitis. The operation was not complicated, but it couldn't wait. I went under anesthesia and everything grew dark. I came to in a ward after the operation had been completed. I felt a little sick and moaned. Suddenly, I felt someone take my hand. It felt really great that someone was there for me. I decided to see who it was and turned my head to look. A girl was lying on the bed next to mine. But what was it? I couldn't believe it. We had the same eyes, the same hair, the same smile. That girl was a copy of me. She was looking at me, surprised and smiling. She probably couldn't believe it either. I wanted to ask her why she looked so much like me, but I couldn't. The girl had an oxygen mask on her face, and so she wouldn't have been able to answer me anyway. But I didn't need an answer. I knew who she was. My twin sister, Isabel. I hadn't seen her in 10 years. We had lived at the same orphanage together. We'd always looked exactly alike. She had been my closest friend, and we'd shared all our joys and sorrows. We had always been there for each other, but after I'd been adopted, my sister had been left alone in the orphanage. We had been separated. I hadn't seen her since, but I'd often thought of her, and I'd always known we would meet again someday. But our reunion was short-lived. That very day, I was moved to another ward. I asked them to let me stay with Isabel, but they told me that we had different diagnoses, so I had to be transferred to another ward. Isabel had got in a car accident and had to spend more time in the ward for seriously ill patients. A few days after that, I was released from the hospital and went home. I hadn't got to see Isabel again, but I couldn't stop thinking about our meeting. I found it strange that we had been separated as children, so I immediately asked my adopted mother about it. She looked very surprised and said, "What are you talking about, Olivia? There had been no Isabel at the orphanage. Maybe Mom had forgotten?" I reminded her that my sister Isabel had been there for me. We looked very similar, but they had chosen me. Why hadn't my parents taken both of us then? "Sweetie, are you feeling all right?" my mother asked anxiously. "You never had a sister. You had been alone there." I couldn't believe it. Why was my mother lying to me? I remembered everything perfectly. I realized that my adopted parents were hiding the truth from me. But why? That's when I decided to find Isabel. As soon as I was able to walk after the operation again, I immediately went back to the hospital. I said I'd come to visit my sister at the reception. I didn't know what her last name was now, but I told them that her first name was Isabel and that she had been admitted after a car accident. Strangely enough, they told me they had not treated any girl fitting that description. How could it be? I told them she looked just like me. That's when they realized who I was talking about. However, they said her name was Hannah, and she'd already been discharged. Hannah? How so? Had my sister changed her first as well as her last name? But why? I asked them for her address, but they said they were only allowed to give me her phone number. In the evening, I called the number they had given me at the hospital. When she answered, I felt that our voices sounded a lot alike. It was her, my sister. I explained to her who I was and cried from joy. "I finally found you," I said through my tears. Isabel, or as she was called now, Hannah, said that she was very glad to hear from me, but unfortunately, she didn't remember me. Hannah said that she had amnesia after the accident, and everything that happened before the hospital had disappeared from her memory. "Then I have a lot to tell you about. Let's meet up," I said cheerfully. Hannah agreed, of course. We met the next day, and I immediately hugged my sister. Hannah was, of course, quite taken aback. After all, she didn't remember me, and so I was a complete stranger to her at that moment. But I started telling her about our childhood at the orphanage and how close we used to be. "Can't you see how similar we look? That's because we're sisters," I said cheerfully. Since then, my sister and I saw each other a lot. Of course, we were family, but 10 years had passed and each of us had different parents now. She couldn't just move in with me or I with her. I hadn't told my adopted parents anything yet. I I still didn't understand why they were lying to me by not admitting that I had a sister. But Hannah told her parents about me and they wanted to meet me. So one night, I went to their house for dinner. When Hannah's mom and dad saw me, they were very surprised, of course. I've heard that everyone in the world has a double somewhere, but to see it with my own eyes, unbelievable, Hannah's mom said. I said that it was not surprising since we were twin sisters, but Hannah's parents laughed all of a sudden and said I was wrong. Hannah didn't have a sister and never had. Moreover, they claimed that they were my sister's biological parents and had never adopted her. It was simply impossible. That's when I realized that Hannah's parents were hiding something as well. They were lying to the both of us. But what was going on? Why were they keeping the truth from us? And then I realized how to get to the bottom of it all. The following day, we met up with my twin, went to a clinic, and did a DNA test to prove we were related. Hannah agreed that it was a good decision, and I was very happy that she was so supportive. We took the test and were told the results would be ready in a few days. We spent the whole time impatiently waiting for the confirmation that we were sisters. And then someone would have some explaining to do, our parents, who didn't want to tell us the truth. I went to see Hannah every day and we talked a lot. I felt supported and cared for by my sister once again and tried to always be there for her as well. One day I was telling her about our childhood she did not remember once again. Hannah was so engrossed in my story about our escapades at the orphanage that it gave me a good idea. Let's visit the place where we grew up. Maybe it will bring back your memory, I suggested. Hannah agreed and we headed to the orphanage. It hadn't changed at all in 10 years. I hadn't been there. It looked the same as it had the day I left, only the children were different. We met the head of the orphanage, Mr. Williams. He didn't even recognize me at the beginning. But when I told him who I was, he smiled and said, "Olivia, it can't be. Look how you've grown." I showed him Hannah and asked if he'd remember my sister. I told him she used to be called Isabel, and we had grown up together in that orphanage. But suddenly the smile disappeared from his face. He looked at me anxiously and said we should talk in his office. Only me and him. I felt a little scared. What did Mr. Williams want to tell me about? But I went with him after all. In the office, he sat me down in front of his desk and told me I was wrong. I never had a real sister. What do you mean never had a sister? I remember her very well. You even took pictures of us together, I told him surprised. Yes, here are those photos. See for yourself, said Mr. Williams and handed me the photos. I saw myself as a child, but there was no one next to me. How could it be? But I remembered her so clearly. And then he told me my story. My parents were very troubled people. When I had been born, they hadn't taken care of me at all. I had been often left all alone. Nobody had paid me any attention. That's why I made up my twin sister Isabel, to have someone to talk to have a sister that would take care of me. My imaginary twin and I had been brought to the orphanage, and when I had been adopted and my parents had begun to take care of me, my sister had gradually disappeared from my mind. I listened to Mr. Williams and started to remember. Pieces of my childhood memories fit into a puzzle. The head of the orphanage was right. How could I have got it so wrong? But who was Hannah then? Just a girl that looked similar to me? Had I really met my double? How was I going to tell her everything now? I walked out of the office and immediately bumped into Hannah. She looked at me with frightened eyes and held out her phone. The DNA tests came in, she said. We aren't related. I already knew that. There were tears in Hannah's eyes. She turned and ran away. I didn't stop her. I left the orphanage and started walking down the street. I was so lost in my own thoughts, I didn't see anything around me. I couldn't believe what had happened, but even more than that, I felt hurt. I just found my only family member and lost her immediately afterwards. I was so lost in my thoughts, I did not notice a red light and went out into the roadway. A car was coming straight at me. I heard the screech of the brakes and then a thud. Then it was dark. I came to in a hospital. I was lying on the same bed Hannah used to lie on. My adoptive mom and dad were sitting next to me. They looked very scared. My mother told me that I had been hit by a car, but the danger had passed and I would soon recover. I felt very sorry for having worried them and ashamed that I had doubted them. I asked them to forgive me and thanked them for caring for me. Now I know that I don't have a sister, I said sadly. What do you mean you don't? Smiled my mom. What about Hannah? The door of the room opened and she came in. My sister. She sat down next to me and said, I'm sorry I ran away. I needed some time to think. Although we're not related, we are sisters in spirit and will always be together. I won't leave you. I started crying with joy, and my parents left to give us some time alone. That's how I found my twin sister. We are always together these days, and I'm glad that everything happened like that. What do you think? Can a complete stranger become closer than a relative? Write in the comments down below.
Hi guys, I'm Henry and I'm 13. This will be my tattoo story. Of course, it's illegal to do them before the age of 18, but look what I have. And I got it tattooed by the coolest artist in our city. Do you want to know who it is? Then subscribe to the channel and watch my story. I've always loved drawing, and I was really good at it, even though I never learned it. Beautiful, isn't it? Probably this talent was passed down to me from my father, who was a painter and worked as a tattoo artist. He created dragons and all sorts of ornaments and motorcycles for the customers, but I never liked his drawings. They were hackneyed old hats. I used to spend a lot of time in my father's parlor and also wanted to become a tattoo artist. My dad liked my wish, so he gave me a piece of paper of an artificial leather and an old machine to practice with. I put hours in doing this, and very soon I started to know the onions. I knew which ink was the best, how to fix a tattoo machine, how to treat a tattoo so it would heal faster. I felt I was ready to work with real clients, and I told my father about it, but he said that it was not enough. I had only gained technical knowledge, but I still needed creative skills. I must have learned to draw beautifully and correctly, but I could already do it. And I showed my dad the tattoo sketch that I'd been drawing all night, but he laughed. No, Henry, it's just a scribble. Go to the School of Art. They'll teach you everything there. Why did I need art school? I could do everything. My father just didn't see that I had my own cool style. That's what my friend Benji used to say when I showed him my sketches. Adults don't always want to acknowledge what their children are doing because they're just jealous of them. So my dad couldn't accept that his son was more creative than he was. But one day, fate gave me a chance to come up with the goods. One day, I was sitting in my father's studio, waiting for him. He called and said he was stuck in traffic, so he would be late. But the client should be there soon. Dad asked me to tell her that the session was canceled for that day. A few minutes later, a pretty girl came into the parlor. We fell into conversation. She said that her name was Nora, and it was her birthday the day before. She always wanted a tattoo, and as soon as she turned 18, she immediately decided to do it. I asked the girl what kind of tattoo she wanted. "I'm easy, something fashionable and beautiful," she replied cheerfully. I said that I could make one for her. I just had a trendy sketch, and I showed her my drawing. "Aren't you too young to make a tattoo?" she asked uncertainly. I confidently pulled on my gloves and turned on the tattoo machine. "Don't sweat it. You're with the best tattoo artist in town," I said. Nora smiled and laid down on the couch. I was a little worried because I was making my first real tattoo, and if I had made a mistake, it would have remained on the girl's body forever. All the more reason to hurry. My father might be back any minute. So I was extremely focused. For the first time, I decided to limit myself to a small drawing, and after a while, it was ready. I was tickled pink with my work. The girl also liked my tattoo. "Cool and edgy," she said. I treated her with ointment and put a bandage on it. Nora said she liked me very much. I was serious and confident, not like other guys. We said goodbye and she ran away. How glad I was. This was my first experience and it came out more than successful. In the evening, when my father returned home, I could not hide my delight and told him what happened that day. But instead of praising me, he started swearing. "What have you done? You can't doodle people! I forbid you!" he shouted. "But the girl liked my drawing," I began to defend myself. My dad said people would laugh at my tattoo and the girl would come to her senses. She would come to the parlor and make a scene. Tattoo artists should be responsible for what they do. I said that my father didn't know anything about modern styles and I knew what I was doing. Anyway, we had a big fight that night. And you know what? My father was dead on, but not about everything. Nora did return to the parlor a week later, not with acclaim, but with gratitude. She said that all her friends liked my drawing so much that she decided to get another one of these tattoos. The surprised father asked the girl to think carefully. After all, with age, her taste might change. Nora harumphed and left. I couldn't miss another chance and rushed to catch up with the girl. I said I would do what she wanted. We exchanged phone numbers and agreed to get in touch. I spent the whole night drawing a tattoo sketch for Nora. I really liked what I had in the end. I was the creator of a new tattooing style. The next day, I waited for my father to leave again on business and called the girl. Half an hour later, she was back on the couch and I was working on her tattoo. During the session, we chatted with her to avoid being bored. Nora told me about herself and I shared with her my life plans. Despite the age difference, we were interested in each other. Soon the tattoo was ready. The girl looked at it and said that I had a great talent. It turned out to be very cool. I was very pleased that she praised me. I asked her whether she would mind if I called her sometime. Nora kissed me on the cheek and said that she'd be happy too. We started to call up and communicate frequently. One day she told me that the tattoo I made wowed her friends, and some of them even wanted to get the same ones. I was thrilled. I had my own fans from now on. So I decided to act. I had a good amount of cash in my piggy bank. I made a list of everything I needed and asked Nora to buy me tattoo equipment. I couldn't have bought it all myself, but the girl went to the store for me and brought a big box. Now I was a real tattoo artist with my own accoutrements. Well, then my work began. I drew sketches at night, and during the day, after school, I tattooed clients at their homes. First, it was Nora's friends. Then they told their friends about me, and the information started to spread on the grapevine. Everyone liked what I was doing, and new orders came in one after another. I had even more clients than my father. My drawing style was now a fashion trend. Yes, I started dating Nora. She was comfortable with the age difference. She liked that I was so talented and made my own money. I started buying all sorts of cool things and was immediately noticed at school. When everyone found out that I was a real tattoo artist and my girlfriend was 18, I immediately turned into the most popular guy. My friend Benji used to say that I was not just talented, but brilliant, like Andy Warhol or Jackson Pollock. Oh, yes, it was true. One night, I drew a sketch so cool that I decided to not give it to anyone, but keep it for myself, I thought. All real tattoo artists have drawings all over their bodies, and I don't have any tattoos yet. So I asked my father to let me turn my sketch into a real tattoo. Dad flatly refused to do it. Not only is this not a drawing, but a daub, so you are also a minor. I don't allow you to get a tattoo, he said. I was offended. He didn't understand how cool my drawings were and how much people liked them. By the end of the month, almost 50 people got my tattoos. Rumors about a young and fashionable master were flying around our town. Other tattoo artists even started repeating after me. I became a style icon. But one night, my secret was revealed. My father showed me a photo of one of my tattoos and said angrily, "Henry, what is this? A guy with this tattoo came to me today. Where did he get it?" I had to own up everything. My dad started yelling that I was making a big mistake. Not only did I doodle people, but also didn't observe sanitation. I was offended by his words and replied that I was doing everything right and he just didn't understand modern artists. I was so angry with my father that I got a tattoo that night by myself. But when it healed, I started showing my drawing off at school. Benji was surprised. "But you're not 18 yet. You can't get into a jam." "No big deal. I am a true artist, and this is my style," I replied. But my self-confidence quickly faded when people from the guardianship department arrived at school after lunch and took me to the station. It turned out that one of the teachers saw my tattoo and called them. My father was waiting for me at the station. He was charged with improper childcare. I replied that I was an adult and had done the tattoo myself. My father didn't know anything. Somehow this case was hushed up. At home, I had a serious conversation with my father, which ended in a quarrel. But wait, there was more. Just a few days later, I got a call from a local TV channel. They said they heard a story about the youngest tattoo artist in town and decided to make a report about me. Oh, that was very nice. Of course, I agreed. I also called Nora to share my success. The camera crew with the reporter arrived quite quickly. They filmed Nora and me and our tattoos. Then I talked for a long time about how I invented my own cool style and how I became popular. At that moment, I was basking in the glory. I was famous. The TV crew shot everything and left. Nora and I went to a cafe to celebrate the event. In the evening, this report was broadcast, and the next day, it was already on the internet. I was happy. The whole world would know about me. But then something happened that I could not have expected. Instead of admiring my work, users started ribbing on it. Look at this squalor. Can this boy draw at all? Who gave him a tattoo machine? These were the most innocuous comments. I was surprised and upset. What's happening? Even the most famous tattoo artists began to post my drawings on their channels with captions, "Don't do this," "The ugliest tattoo in the world," and "Children's creativity." I was depressed. I didn't expect this. This wasn't the kind of fame I needed. After that, my father took all my tattoo equipment away from me and said that I was a disgrace to him. Was he right? The school started laughing at me. From the most popular guys, I immediately slipped into losers. Even my friend Benji suddenly said that my drawings were not very good and I needed to work on the style. My girlfriend Nora stopped answering my calls. But the worst thing was that a few days later, my father's parlor began to receive clients whom I tattooed. They swore and demanded to fix what I had done. My dad was forced to cover my drawings with new tattoos for free. I thought for a long time, and you know what I came to? I'm really talented. People just aren't ready for my work yet. No one understands that I am a true master. But one day, my tattoos will become immortal masterpieces. Write in the comments, what do you think about them?
Hi, my name is Victoria, and I just turned 18. I will remember this birthday forever. I got a gift I've never even dreamed of. Trust me, it was a killer surprise. Do you want to know what happened to me? Then subscribe to the channel, and I will tell you my story. All of my previous birthdays were not all that memorable. I usually had a birthday dinner, received some gifts, sometimes friends would come, and I would throw a party. But I had always wanted something unusual, amazing, some kind of surprise. Just before my 18th birthday, I told my brother Liam about my wish. He listened to me and said he would think of something. Liam liked cool cars. He had as many as 3 of them that he was constantly working on in his garage. A week before my birthday, he locked himself in there and started building something. I heard the clatter of tools, saw flashes from electric welding. I wanted to see what he was doing, but Liam wouldn't let me in and said it was a surprise. And finally, my birthday came. In the morning, my parents congratulated me and gave me presents. My brother said I had a very special gift waiting for me. He drove a very cool car out of the garage. It was an extreme racing modification. Liam told me he'd made it more secure and he put the most powerful engine inside. "Get in! This will be the coolest race in your life," he said. I was a little bit scared, but I sat in the passenger seat and fastened my seatbelt. I hadn't expected such a gift at all. Liam started the car and I heard the engine roar. We waved to Mom and Dad and pulled out onto the road. At first, everything was going great. We drove down the street and stopped at all the traffic lights. Liam said the fun would start a little later when we were out of town, when there would be no pedestrians or oncoming cars in the way. And then there were no more houses on the sides of the road. We got on the highway. "Here we go," my brother said before he slammed the gas pedal. I immediately got pressed into the seat and felt dizzy. We were going so fast I closed my eyes in fear. Liam drifted around the turns and the car skidded like crazy. It was a huge adrenaline rush. Eventually the road ended and we were driving on bare ground between the trees. Liam deftly skirted obstacles without slowing down. We drove farther and farther away. I had no idea where we were anymore. All that was around were trees. And suddenly, at the next turn, my brother didn't notice a ravine. Liam spun the steering wheel wildly, but it was too late. We flew down at full speed and the car turned over. I screamed in fear. When the engine died, my brother looked at me and asked, "Are you all right?" I told him he was an idiot and that he ruined my birthday. We unbuckled our seatbelts and got out of the car. My brother tried to turn it back over, but it didn't work. I looked around. There was no one who could help us. It seemed we were in trouble. Liam said we'd have to walk back to town. "Are you serious?" I was surprised, but my brother said we had no other options. We didn't even know where we were. Well, that was just great. I would have to walk through the woods in my favorite shoes on my birthday. "Well, thank you for the gift, brother," I said angrily and began to crawl out of the ravine. We walked past the trees. Liam kept trying to explain himself and begging for forgiveness. He said that he'd underestimated the power of the car, and it turned out to be a bit too powerful. But never mind that. We'd find someone to help turn it over, and it would be good as new again. We must have walked for an hour or two, but there was still no road to be seen. Moreover, there were more and more trees around. We were getting deeper into the woods. Liam, are you sure we're going in the right direction? I asked my brother. He said that everything was under control and we would soon reach a fork in the road, but we kept going for another hour, and it still wasn't anywhere to be seen. Meanwhile, it had started to get dark and cold. Liam began to get worried and look around a lot. I realized we were truly lost. Well, that was just perfect. What a fun car ride. I was ready to kill my stupid brother. An hour later, it had got completely dark. We didn't know where to go and just hoped we'd find some house, but there was nothing but trees around. Suddenly, Liam noticed something up ahead. "Victoria, look," he said. I looked closer and saw a fire nearby. We were not alone there. We could definitely get help. But as soon as we entered the clearing, our optimism vanished. A fire was burning in the middle of it, and things were scattered around, but there were no people. Strange, what could have happened there? It was like someone had a fight there. And where had the people disappeared? Suddenly, I saw a phone in the grass. There was a picture on the screen of a young couple taken on that very clearing. They were tourists, but where had they gone and what happened? I felt uneasy. Without waiting for anyone to come, my brother and I went on. We still had to get out of the woods. It was getting colder and scarier. I wasn't mad at Liam anymore. I just wanted it all to be over as soon as possible. After walking for a while, we suddenly saw a house. There was light in the windows, so someone was inside. They would help us for sure. We came up to the house and knocked. An old man dressed as a hunter opened the door. When he saw us, he let us in at once. We told him what had happened to us and asked him to call someone for help. The old man immediately grabbed a radio and sent a message that the two of us had got lost in the woods. "The rescue team will be here soon. Don't you worry," he said. Ugh, finally! I felt so much better. It was warm and cozy in the house. I immediately relaxed and calmed down a little. The old man said his name was Mr. Manson and that he was a forest ranger. While we were waiting for help, he offered us to eat some dinner. I was terribly hungry and gladly agreed. Mr. Manson immediately set the table and we sat down to eat. After dinner, he went away somewhere and we were left waiting for the rescue team on our own. Time passed, but for some reason nobody came. "Don't you think this is weird?" I asked Liam. "Yes, they are taking their time," my brother replied. I decided to call them again and picked up the old man's radio. That's when I saw that it was broken. How had he contacted the rescue team then? Or maybe he lied to us? I got scared. I looked at my brother and saw that he was afraid as well. What was going on? Suddenly, we heard muffled shouting. It was coming from somewhere at the back of the house. Liam and I went to see who it was coming from. There was a door in the floor of the back room. We opened it and saw stairs leading down to the basement. "Please help us!" came a voice from there. My brother and I went downstairs and saw two people locked in a cage. It couldn't be. Those were the tourists from the clearing. What had happened? Liam asked them. "That old man is insane. We must run. Help us get out of here," told us the guy from behind the bars. A shiver ran down my spine. I was very scared. We were in the lair of a monster. Liam tried to open the cage, but it didn't work. "Sit still. We will bring help soon," he said. My brother grabbed my hand and we began to make our way out of the basement. Suddenly, Mr. Manson appeared at the top of the stairs. He slammed the basement doors shut, and we fell back down. As I landed, I hit my head and lost consciousness. When I came to, I was sitting in a cage in that basement. In the cage next to mine were those guys and my brother. Liam said the old man had trapped us after all. What would happen to us now? I started to cry. "Don't cry, Victoria. We'll get out of here," Liam reassured me. "But how?" I asked. My brother reached through the bars to the table with a large toolbox on it. He pushed it, and the box fell right into the cage where I was sitting. The tools fell out onto the floor. "Take one of them and try to break the lock," my brother said. I picked up a screwdriver and began picking at the rusty lock of my cage. I didn't believe I could do it, but the lock clicked open. I was free. I quickly got out of the cage and hurried to free my brother and the other two. But no matter how much I poked at the lock on their cage, it wouldn't budge. It was useless. "Victoria, leave us. You should get out and get some help," said Liam. I was very scared, but I couldn't leave my brother and those guys there. I had to save them. So I steeled myself and got out of the basement. The house was quiet. I soundlessly stepped into the big room and suddenly saw the old man. He was sleeping on the couch. What if he woke up? I was terrified. Without making a sound, I opened the door and ran out. After I'd been running for a while, I stopped. Where was I supposed to head next? I didn't know the way out of that damned forest. Suddenly, I heard hurried footsteps. They were getting closer. That's when I saw the old man among the trees. He was running towards me. My heart started pounding and I ran on. Would he catch up to me? It felt like I was running as fast as one of my brother's cars. But after a while, I felt exhausted. No, please, just a bit more. I suddenly ran out onto the riverbank. Where to next? I saw a log thrown across the river. I could hear the footsteps behind me, so I quickly jumped on it. It was not easy to walk as the log was very slippery. I'd almost reached the other side when my foot slipped and I fell into the water. When I resurfaced, I gasped for air. I was helpless against the current. The river carried me downstream. I ran out of strength. I realized I couldn't fight anymore. Was this the end for me? I was in complete despair when I noticed a tree branch on my way. It was hanging low over the water and I was able to grab it. Barely moving my ice-cold hands, I finally made it to the shore. Exhausted, I fell on the grass and shivered from the cold. All of a sudden, I heard strange noises nearby. "Who's there?" I asked, unable to even get up. Suddenly, there was some light on the shore and I saw people. They cheered. "Surprise! Happy birthday!" What did it all mean? I saw my brother among them. Liam ran up to me, helped me up, and wrapped me in a blanket. "Liam, how did you get out?" I was gobsmacked. That's when I saw that there were several cars parked on the beach. They were illuminating the shore with their headlights. I saw the forest ranger, the camping pair, and my brother in the crowd. They were all smiling. What was going on? Liam said they were actors, and this had all been his birthday present to me. The quest I had just completed. It had all been set up in advance. "Well, did you like it?" my brother asked cheerfully. I wanted to punch him for everything I'd been through that day, but I just didn't have any strength left. "Now for the main gift," Liam said solemnly. Everyone moved out of the way, and I saw the same car my brother and I had been driving earlier that day. It was tied with a red ribbon and had a large bow on the roof. My brother handed me the keys. "Happy birthday, sis! It's your car now!" It was the coolest birthday ever, and I will definitely remember it for the rest of my life. But you know what I care about most right now? My cunning brother's birthday is in a month, and I want to throw him a party he will never be able to forget as well. But I have no ideas yet. Write in the comments, how should I get back at Liam for what he did to me?